Good evening and welcome to the weekly battle report of the International LaRouche Movement. Today is Wednesday, November 19th. I'm Michelle Aaron, your host. While the long arc of history is bending towards development, and as nations representing the global majority of humanity, led by China, and including such constellations of countries as the BRICS Plus nations and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, act to improve the lives of their populations, the world dynamic is in a tense moment. An old paradigm, carrying the vestiges of empire and now threatening financial blowout, economic collapse, and wars, has not yet been overcome. And as indicated this past Monday by Helga Zepp-LaRouche, one factor in the outcome will be our energetic efforts to move the discussion to a state of reason. Tonight's battle report will include a statement from Diane Serre, from the LaRouche Movement United States on the situation in Venezuela. This week's activities report from Mexico. And more from the LaRouche Movement's recent international conference in Paris, a field video report made in Paris by organizers from Brazil and Mexico. So we're going to start with Diane Serre's latest TikTok video, where she speaks on the situation in Venezuela and how to actually stop the drug trade.
Baxter and I have a few thoughts today, and this pertains to Venezuela and this very barbaric judge, Emile Beauvais, who is now at the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, who apparently said back in February that it was legitimate for the United States to just blow up boats in international waters. In case you wondered, there's Baxter. He takes this very seriously, especially judges who don't follow the Constitution. Now, this is not going to stop drugs. First of all, Venezuela is not the biggest problem. You might want to look to the Colombian President Petro, who's much more friendly with the narcos and who thinks we should legalize everything. But even so, we have no business overthrowing governments. What people who worked in the Department of Justice and elsewhere have pointed out is that the standard policy for going after drug traffickers is you stop the boat, board the boat, seize the drugs, arrest the people, put them on trial, interrogate them, and you get intelligence about who their bosses are and how this traffic is being run. If you just go in there like Obama did with the droning of an American citizen, Anwar al-Awlaki, people might remember, who probably knew something about 9/11, but he was eliminated, so we'll never find out. If that's what you do, you're actually weakening your so-called war on drugs, because you're never going to have the evidence, presuming these people are even drug traffickers in the first place, which we really don't know. So this is an embarrassment, and we have the possibility of a military invasion of Venezuela, a demand for regime change, which is also insane. We're not going to win a war in Venezuela. It will be a catastrophic bloodbath. People from Colombia and Brazil will eagerly flood across the border to fight Americans if we send troops on the ground. This is just completely stupid. And I don't know who is telling President Trump it would be a good idea. Perhaps Marco Rubio is the author of this foolhardy plot. Hopefully somebody tells President Trump that it's a bad idea and to cut it out. And if he really wants to shut down drugs, then he has to go after Wall Street, as Lyndon LaRouche said decades ago, for which LaRouche was branded anti-Semitic by the organized crime drug lobby Anti-Defamation League.
Tomorrow, Diane will participate in a roundtable discussion on the increasingly dangerous situation in the Caribbean. The discussion is led by Mrs. Helga Zepp-LaRouche and will include participants from Venezuela, Brazil, Guyana, Mexico, and the United States. There will be simultaneous interpretation of this meeting into Spanish, French, and German on Zoom, so register to get access to the translation. As the invitation to this roundtable discussion states, the United States has no reason to fear the Belt and Road Initiative and the BRICS, and should instead cooperate with them in building those great projects. This approach could rapidly develop the entire Caribbean Basin region and stop the real narco-trafficking and related migrant problems that will only be worsened by an attack on Venezuela. Now let's go to the weekly activities report from Fabiola Ramirez with the LaRouche Movement in Mexico, and then we'll head to Paris.
Hello, I am Fabiola Ramirez from the LaRouche organization in Mexico, and this is a brief report of activities from November 18th. Today, we were organizing around the Zoom roundtable that will take place on Thursday, November 20th, titled President Trump, Don't Do It, an alternative U.S. policy for the Caribbean. So we improvised a poster on the topic, brought the printed invitation, and distributed it in front of the Hemiciclo Juárez monument.
Internacional del Lindo LaRouche en diferentes ciudades del mundo.
We gave reports over the megaphone about the crisis in Venezuela and argued that instead of a policy of confrontation, the United States should have a policy of collaboration. Today, Mexico City's journalists club page called Voices of the Journalist published the invitation to the roundtable organized by EIR. We received many responses from passers-by. Some shouted that such an invasion wasn't going to happen. Others said that we should only think about Mexico and not what happens in other countries. But there is also the case of a guy who, living in a border state, recognized that for his state and Mexico to move forward and develop their industry, they have to collaborate with the United States and the BRICS. Saludos and see you soon.
Thank you, Fabiola. I think that was a wonderful back-to-back with Diane giving some of the insights into the situation and our Mexican organization going out and organizing for solutions. Now to Paris with a report on organizing deployment coming out of the recent International LaRouche Movement Conference in Paris. This report was originally in Portuguese and in Spanish. We have Esteban from Brazil and Carolina and Alan from Mexico.
Hello, my friends and colleagues from Brazil. Estevo here with my representatives from Mexico from the Schiller Institute. We're recording this video to give you a brief summary of this great week's event in Paris, which discussed the emancipation of African countries and, of course, our fight against the current financial system and the construction of a new global architecture. Well, to sum it up in general, I should say that I think that we were all very inspired by all the conferences we attended. These conferences addressed very crucial problems of our society. We talked about the issue of Africa and the importance of these countries achieving independence and economic development, because it is only through this global cooperation that we will be able to solve the problems of our world. I would also like to comment on the words of Miss Helga LaRouche. She gave us very strong motivation mobilizing all the youth so we can join forces and continue with this project. So I'm going to quickly pass the word here to Carolina and also to Alan. Yes, we are in Paris. It's an organizing like you can do with other young people at a university. It's a joint deployment with young people from the movement in different countries. This display includes some banners and signs and some flyers about the principles of the international movement. We have been talking with young people about the possibility of creating, as Esteban says, a new international financial system. We have had dialogues and exchanges about how we are going to create an international youth movement that can intervene in the politics of our countries and improve them. Alan is also here from Mexico, and together we have been doing these demonstrations with our colleagues in Paris. Yes, and it has been a very good experience being here in Paris, because in addition to getting to know the best of the local culture, which is very rich, it is also being able to be in contact with the entire international organization and get to know each other and be able to feel that energy, that feeling of peace, of the noblest things of humanity, and which is very important because it shows that we share an intention, and that is something impressive to see, to feel, and that there are other people who have that same intention. So that's also a very, very good thing. That's it, folks. Thank you for watching. So we're going to conclude our participation here by leaving this message of optimism and hope, right? Long live Brazil and Portugal. Yes, I just spoke to him in Portuguese here with us. So this message of hope and optimism remains. Although the world's problems are quite critical, I think that we, from the Schiller Institute and Solidarity and Progress, the movement of LaRouche, have to preach these messages. I hope you enjoyed it. See you later.
Very good to hear from our members from Brazil and Mexico there. And the flyer that Carolina was holding up, if you missed the header, said, "The West at a crossroads. Do the dirty work for financial predators or join the global majority?" Quite a question. And we are all looking forward to the next conference of the International Schiller Institute, which will be of the youth of the Schiller Institute on December 14th, a youth dialogue titled Youth of the World Unite, again with simultaneous interpretation in German, English, Spanish, and French. There will be a morning and an afternoon panel. You are encouraged to register now to get updates for youth, actually, to register young people for this conference, and get in touch if you need help, if you need support in reaching out to young people to have them participate in this December 14th conference. We now have a report from Joe Jennings in Houston, Texas, who distributed flyers on Sunday morning near two Catholic churches to fill in the attendees that Pope Leo discussed Cusa with 10,000 Jubilee pilgrims in St. Peter's Square. That was the flyer he was distributing, and on the other side of that flyer also included the call from Helga Zepp-LaRouche on November 5th, calling for representatives of all religions and cultures around the world to start a dialogue to solve the strategic crises facing mankind, inspired by Nicholas of Cusa's coincidence of opposites method of thinking.
Good morning, everyone. This is Joe with the Schiller Institute in downtown Houston today, standing across the street from the Sacred Heart Co-Cathedral, because there's two cathedrals in the Galveston-Houston Archdiocese here, passing out the good news of Pope Leo's amazing Jubilee address, which hearkened to Nicholas of Cusa, whose coincidence of opposites could give us a pedagogical understanding of what it would take to bring this sorry world together. So I was at two different churches this morning. I met someone at the Annunciation Church who called himself a liberation theologist, and we're going to stay in touch. But most people had not heard of this, had not heard of the Jubilee speech by His Holiness Pope Leo. So it's very important that I was out there. I got out over 100 leaflets, and we're going to keep spreading the word. That's it from downtown Houston. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. So join the organizing. As Joe demonstrated in his report, getting out there to talk to people and organize can be as simple as printing out a flyer from one of the LaRouche Movement websites and distributing and talking to people. Or not talking to people sometimes. Or you can do what we saw with Esteban, Carolina, and Alan reporting. They went all the way to Paris, and they participated with a whole bunch of people from all over the world organizing with the LaRouche Movement with a big setup, with beautiful signs, with literature, talking especially to young people. So get out there and organize. While you're out organizing, snap a photo or two, or do a quick selfie video and send in your reports to info@LaRoucheOrganizing.com, LaRoucheOrganization.com, and we look forward to seeing you next week.